Okay, good morning. It is October 24, it's 10:01, and I'm going to call this NR meeting to order. Before we move forward in adopting the agenda, I just would like to recognize members of the committee who are present here today. Rep. Richard Lazama from Precinct 5, Rep. Janita Yangtamai from Precinct 3, who's our Vice Chair of the Natural Resources Committee. Thank you to Legal Counsel Joe Tyron for being here, and Legislative Assistant Cam Nicholas for filling in today. Thank you so much. And John Diaz for assisting us with tech. Okay, and so moving on with the agenda, we have adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion? There's been a motion, it's been seconded. Any discussion on the agenda? Ready? Okay. All those in favor of adopting today's agenda, say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Today's agenda has been adopted. Okay, moving on. Public comments. We have the floor open for public comments. And if you could please state your name for the record. You have 5 minutes. And the floor is open.
Good morning. My name is Eli Cabrera. I am the administrator for the BECQ, and I am here to do some comment on House Bill 22-73. It's to amend certain section of Title II, Division 3 for the under the litter control. I believe this bill will be like the transfer for down to the mayor's office for the island of Saipan, Tinian, and Rhoda. And I see that this bill, I fully agreed on this bill because I have had a few discussion with Representative Leila. Sorry. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, my sister, Representative Danita, my god brother, Richard Lisama, Representative. And before I move forward, I'm happy to be back in the house. It's been a while that I haven't been here. I left the house back in 2000, I think 2012 or 13. Right, Joe? Council Joe? It's nice to be back. Nice to be back. Okay. And again, thank you, Mr. Cameron. Yes, the bill looks good. I have a few discussion with Representative Sheila on this. Um, the reason why I try to discuss it in the past, I've discussed in the past with Sheila regarding to the movement of this litter control. The litter control program does not fall under or is not being recognized by EPA. And we get 100% funding by EPA. EPA told us that the litter control program is a state level, not under the federal level. So every state have their own, litter control program. So in our case, yes, we don't receive funding at all the time, but in the past 2 or 3 years, I've asked and I've got some funding for the litter control. So I asked for Tinian, Rhoda, and Saipan. We hired two, one for Tinian and one for Rhoda. Saipan, I have not hired anybody yet for the litter program because funding the program is not that cheap. We need to provide a vehicle for the Tinian and Rhoda. For any complaint, they have to go out to the field to do inspection. And the reason why I totally agree to give it to the mayor's office. The mayor's office are the first hand people going out to the village every day. So it's good if they are trained to be an enforcement as well. So when they see something, they can issue citation. But if they want to wait and call the agency like DEQ, and we don't have the FTE for this, we just try to utilize what we have in the office and send our guy out. But this guy are funded under the EPA, and I was told not to use the employee under the EPA funding to send out to do a local activity. So with that, I fully support, because the mayor are the first time people, first, the first people that will see and will recognize if it's a littering. And they've been doing it. There's one employee that's really active on this from the mayor's office. Even Tinian too are, they are very, very concerned. There's a lot of littering in Tinian. Rhoda not as bad as Saipan and Tinian. So with that, I would like to ask you guys to support the bill, and please pass it. And the bill is looks good as it is. We can be the one to train them, certify them, because we get the DPS involved and the Attorney General for any legal question that we cannot respond. We always have our legal counsel in the office, but also we invite one of the police officer that handles. I think believe he's a part of the traffic guy, and so he knows a lot about enforcement under the littering as well. And also Saipan, we have at least 16 locations that we have big trash bin that was developed and been promoted by CRM, Coastal Resource Management. We have 16 different locations, and we need to go and revisit the site and see if we need to put back again another litter free, CNMI or something. We need to revisit that. We have 16 locations. We have the location where they're at. So with that, thank you for your patience and understanding.
Thank you, Mr. Eli Cabrera. Thank you for joining us today and your public comments. And it was really nice to have you back in the House. Former Speaker Eli Cabrera, thank you for being here. The floor is still open for public comments. And if there are none, we will move on with today's agenda. Moving into section D, members of our agenda, legislation for review and markup. The first on our agenda is House Bill 2243 to create an anti-littering incentive program by providing a reward for persons reporting violations of the Litter Control Act and for other purposes, authored by Representative Joel Camacho. Members, this is open for discussion at this time. Yes, Rep. Lizama?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Yes, at one point of time, I was thinking about doing this bill, and I'm glad that Rep. Joel Camacho came up with this bill. It is important that we have people out there get some type of incentive for reporting inappropriate acts, such as illegal dumpings and so forth. You know, we have people throwing, say, for example, a can of beer out of the windows and many others in a different places. And I will be picking up as a representative. I will go along the road and I will see a bag of McDonald's on the road. Well, if I see that, and if we have this law, I'll take the number of that vehicle, the license plate number, the time, and I will report it and let the enforcement do their job by investigating how and who was driving that vehicle at that point, at that time. So I believe that this bill is necessary, that we provide some type of incentive to people that are reporting illegal dumpings or making litterings on our roads, and we want a good environment. This is a small islands, and we wanted to have our island clean. I thank you. I hear back.
Thank you, Rep. Lizama. The bill received 12 public comments, and I'm going to list the comments that we received and from what agency: the Indigenous Affairs Office, Dr. Teresa Ariola, the Marianas Visitors Authority, Office of the 18th Rhoda Municipal Council, chaired by Mr. Jim Atalik, Department of Lands and Natural Resources, Secretary Anthony Benaventi. Department of Community and Cultural Affairs, Secretary Joseph De Leon Guerrero. Department of Finance, Secretary David Atelig, Mr. Angelo Villagomez. Department of Commerce, Rhoda, Resident Department Head Dean Manglonia. Department of Public Works, Secretary James Adda. And the Mariana Islands Nature Alliance, Executive Director Roberta Guerrero. And lastly, from the Office of the Mayor, Rhoda. And so, members, these public comments were received months ago, some as late as yesterday. And it's a mixture of support and concerns, as well as questions for clarifications and suggestions for amendments. And after reviewing all the public comments received, I would like to recommend that it remain on the agenda and all these comments be shared with the author, Rep. Joel Camacho. And I would like to ask him to offer amendments or suggested edits. Because there were significant questions and suggestions from these departments and agencies. Yes, Rep. Lizama.
Do you see the comments that came from those 11 or 12? Did you say how many of them? Do you see that they're like, what's the rate of in favors?
We have 5 in favor and the rest not, with amendments and suggestions. Yeah. So before they can support the bill, they would like for the committee to consider the suggested amendments to the bill.
Okay, so we'll recommend that we'll send it back to the author.
I would recommend we request the author to assist. Yes,
Thank you.
and we can leave it on the agenda
Okay.
because it's significant. Any other comments, members? Okay, so if there's no objection, I'd like to move on to the next item on our agenda. No objection? Okay, great. Okay, moving on. House Bill 22-44 to conserve, protect, and enhance the CNMI's native plants and trees for generations to come and for other purposes, authored by Rep. Joel Camacho. The floor is open for comments, members. Yes, Rep. Lizama.
Yes, once again, thank you, Chairwoman. I remember this bill that was brought to my attention too, but again, Rep. Joel Camacho took initiative and introduced this bill. There's a plant in an island that are not been properly secured for future generation to see those kind of trees or plants. It is important that we have identify those plants to be protected. You know, when the guy who basically want us to introduce this bill, he was for the agriculture, and his complaint was that there is no law when someone just came and went and hit that tree or ran over that tree and those kind of things. So it is important that we identify those trees or plants to be protected, and if anyone that's doing something inappropriately, they need to be fined or be responsible for his or her action. Thank you. I hear back now.
Thank you, Rep. Lizama. Rep. Jenny Thankmine.
I just want to say this is a good bill because it protects all these the plants that are needed here for medicine or other things. But it will be great to have a designated area just for these plants, because like Rep. Lizama said, if someone hits it with or a tree for some reason or other, they wouldn't know that that's an endangered species or whatever. So it's good to have place designated for these trees, just like in, I think, was it Rhoda or Tinian? They have that, yeah, they have that almond plantation or whatever. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Denita. This bill received 14 comments. After your committee solicited comments from a variety of agencies and individuals. And again, I will go down the list for the members so that you are aware. We received public comments from Indigenous Affairs Office, Marianas Visitors Authority, the Office of the Mayor in Rhoda, Department of Lands and Natural Resources, Office of the 18th Rhoda Municipal Council, Dr. Teresa Ariola, Department of Community and Cultural Affairs, Department of Lands and Natural Resources, Tinian, Department of Public Works, Department of Finance, Department of Commerce, Office of the Attorney General, Mariana Islands Nature Alliance, and Mr. Robbie Green. Good morning, members. I just want to recognize Representative Angel de Mapan from Precinct 1 and Representative Patrick St. from our sister island in Tinian. Thank you, members, for joining us. We are on Section D of the agenda, Part 2, going over House Bill 22-44 to conserve, protect, and enhance the scenemized native plants and trees for generations to come and for other purposes, authored by Rep. Joel. So members, we received a number of comments for this bill, and the floor is still open for discussion.
Are we still on 22-44?
Yes, we are still on 22-44. The only major concern shared with me was that the bill did not define the term native plant and or native tree and gives broad regulatory mandates to the Department of Public Lands and Natural Resources. Yes, Rep. St. Nicholas?
Yes, you do have the House Bill number 2-70 or 179.
I will call for a recess.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
It's Okay, we're back in session for our meeting, and the floor is still open for discussion under item number D2, House Bill 22-44, to conserve, protect, and enhance the CNMI's native plants and trees for generations to come and for other purposes, authored by Rep. Joel. We received 14 comments, mostly in support. However, major concerns around defining native plants and other definitions in the bill. The floor is still open for discussion. Yes, Rep. Angel.
Chair, thank you. I know you mentioned about a comment submitted regarding definitions. Are we going to address that today?
We can address that today. I would also recommend to the committee that we communicate with the author and see if he can offer some recommendations as to the intent of his bill and the definitions he had in mind.
Thank you, Chair. And I just realized that wasn't one of the three that you mentioned earlier, so I yield.
Thank you, Rep. Angel. Thank you, Rep. Angel. The floor is still open. Rep. Lizama?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. Yes, I think it makes sense that I don't know if it's appropriate to list all those plants, because I don't know what plants are we talking about here. So it's important that people know what plants are native and strictly prohibited for any wrongdoing. Whether you either you kill it or what, those kind of things. So it's important that we know. And I think one of the common there is they want us to be specific on the names of those plants. Thank you. I hear back.
Thank you, Rep. Lizama. Yes, I agree that we need to be very clear on what is native as to support the intent of the bill. The floor is open for discussion. Okay, members. So we'll leave this on the agenda. After today's meeting, whatever is left on the agenda will be communicated with the authors, and we'll give them a deadline to our next meeting. So we'll keep it on the agenda until our next meeting. If they can offer any amendments or suggestions for the committee to consider, I think that would speed up things for our committee. There's been a question raised by a member on whether we have to move or offer a motion on leaving items on the agenda. Legal counsel? Do we need a motion in place, or can I, as chair, just state that we will leave this on the agenda and move forward?
I believe there's no motion to do it either, so it's just, to me, it's still on the agenda. And we're moving forward.
Okay.
Unless there's.
Yeah, there's no action taking place. Okay. So if there's no objection, I would like to leave this on the agenda and we move forward.
No objection.
Okay, no objection. Thank you, members. Moving on to House Bill 22-73 to amend certain sections under Title II, Division 3, Chapter 4 of the Commonwealth Code to enable the mayors of each municipality to enforce provision in the Litter Control Act of 1989 as amended and for other purposes, authored by Rep. Leila Staffler. Members, we did receive 2 comments on this bill, one from the mayor of Saipan, Mr. David Apatang, who is in support of the bill. We received public comment today from Administrator Eli Cabrera, who's in support of the bill in its current form, and one comment from the Mariana Islands Nature Alliance Executive Director, Roberta Guerrero. The floor is open for discussion, members.
Full house for action.
Rep. San Nicolas asked if we are going to vote on this or bring it to the full House for action. Yes. This House bill, I recommend that we adopt in its current form. Once the committee adopts any of our bills on the agenda, it will be, a committee report will be prepared, and then that committee report will be offered to the House. Rep. Lizama?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Once again, I'm glad that the Secretary of BECQ was here and testified that it's important that we identify an enforcement to be identified as a you can call it park rangers, you know, park rangers, and they go around each parks, and uh, probably that park rangers will help us uh, educating the people who are utilizing the parks that they will be responsible with their litters, trash, and that they would take the litters or trash with them to the house, or throw them in an appropriate place. So with this new enforcement and assigning it over to the mayor's office, I'm pretty sure. I remember way back that they were in uniform. You know, they were in uniform when they went around. And when you see a uniform enforcement coming into a park, for example, you know, to the beach area, I kind of give you an alert, and it reminds you. It will remind you that, hey, you know, we have to clean our area here, because they're watching us, and that's the enforcement that they will be doing that. So it's important that we identify, and I think the municipality of Saipan have no problem taking the responsibility. And with that, I'm in support of this bill, ma'am. Thank you, I yield.
Thank you, Rep. Lizama. The floor is still open for discussion, members. Rep. Angel?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the Litter Control Act because it's gone through several revisions. The most previous one was through a legislation that I authored, which is Public Law 19-53. So I'm just making sure that the updates are consistent with the amendments. And I realized that in 1953, or in this bill, it had already included the office of the mayor. The amendment is just specifying the mayor of each senatorial district. And this is just adding and follow up to colleague Lizama. It's not transferring the litter control to the mayor, but adding them as one of the control officers agencies with the regulatory agencies that are already there. And so with that addition, I think it strengthens the task force or working group for the litter control program, and hopefully there can be a little bit more enforcement. I understand that BECQ and some of MVA, I believe, as a partner agency, have been issuing citations. But adding the addition of the mayor's office from each municipality would I guess, enable the litter control program to expand its outreach and its enforcement. So, um, having reviewed these amendments, I am also, for the record, in support of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Demapan. The floor is open for discussion, members, and thank you, Rep. Demapan, for making that clarification on record. Yes, members, this bill grants enforcement authority to the mayor's office of each municipality, but the mayor's office was already a part of the original language in the law, and a minor amendment to the Department of Public Health updated to Bureau of Environmental Health, as well as requiring the Department of Finance to establish litter control program fund accounts for each of the senatorial districts. So the floor is still open for discussion. But your chair recommends passage in adoption in current form. So there's been a motion to adopt House Bill 2273 in its current form, and it's been seconded. Discussion? Ready, members? Okay, all those in favor of adopting House Bill 22-73 in its current form, say aye. All those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Thank you, members. House Bill 22-73 has been adopted. Okay, moving on to item D4 on the agenda, House Bill 22-117 to amend 2 CMC subsection 5631 and 5109 to authorize Gillnet, locally known as Teching, in the 3rd Senatorial District and provide additional penalties for any violations, authored by your Vice Chair of the NR Committee, Rep. Danita Yangtamay. Your committee did receive one comment from the Mariana Islands Nature Alliance with concerns around the bill, and that has been shared with the committee and with the author. The floor is open for discussion. Rep. Demapan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I understand this is one of the latest bill not to be introduced in the House, and so we haven't really had an opportunity to engage with the stakeholders. I have reviewed the comments from Mina, and there is an opposition here from Mina, but I think it's also fair that we hear from other stakeholders before we make an informed decision, because obviously the mover of this legislation, colleague Yang Tamay, has her findings and purpose of this bill, and it's only being countered by one organization. So I think if there's no objection in the committee, I'd like to recommend that we solicit more comments from stakeholders regarding this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Demapan. The floor is still open for discussion. Rep. Yangtamay?
I just want to share that I thought I covered everyone, but I guess I did not cover Mina. Um, when we went down to Rhoda and Tinian, we spoke with the DLNR. What do you call those? RD? Yes. And about this, the taking in Rhoda and Tinian, and also to our Fish and Wildlife manager of here, Mr. Pangilinan, and also with other people in the community, and along with the council here, Council Joe. So he did some amendments. We came up with amendments. We did some changes. This is an old what do you call that, bill. It's been in circulation forever. So, but we doing amendments. So now that Mina is not supporting it, maybe we can also go down and check see Miss Roberta to find out more. No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Yangtamay. So members, if there's no objection, I'd like to go ahead and, yes, Rep. Demapan?
I'm sorry, Chair. I just have one question of clarification. Maybe this is something the council can answer, because this is a House bill, but it's to authorize decking in the 3rd Senatorial District.
Mhm.
Should this have been a House local bill under the Saipan delegation?
That would have been a lot easier, but unfortunately, the current public law governing this issue allows for Rhoda and Tinian to currently practice the teching practice. And that, seen in my wide law, carves out the 3rd Senatorial District. So that's why we would need to address it at a Commonwealth level. Ideally, you are right. And then Rep. Yangtamay would have preferred to just deal with the 3rd Senatorial District, but she actually did her due diligence. And we went to Tinian and Rhoda to actually look at as to why the Senatorial District, the 3rd Senatorial District, was being omitted from the Commonwealth-wide law permitting this practice, because we wouldn't want to legalize something here that would be detrimental. So we found out why it's legal there and whether or not they would support it. And we found universal support from Rhoda and Tinian that it wasn't adversely, and the bill as written would continue that sustainable practice. None of the jurisdictions from Tinian and Rhoda expressed a sentiment that they were, against this bill and that this is a bad idea, that only Rhoda should have it and only Tinian should have it because of the populations there were small or the fishing population was high. So that's why, ideally, we would have loved just to do it your way. Long answer. Sorry.
Thank for me. Thank you, Council, for that clarification. Um, I guess that public law that was done by House Bill at the time was because there was a severe overfishing in Saipan by teching, and really the biggest problem was catching fish that were too small, right? So um, that was the control mechanism, was to prohibit it in Saipan, not allow it in Rodentinian, where it's a lot easier to manage sustainable fishing over there. I get why they would provide the support from Tinian and Rhoda, because they don't have the adverse impacts that we see in Saipan. But because this is in third senatorial district, now we're seeing these comments come from Mina about those kinds of concerns, and I think that we shouldn't just go back to Mina to talk about it. I think that we have to engage other stakeholders in the fishing community, and if there's any, I don't know who else would be a partner to be that would be another resource to get comments from. But thank you for that clarification, Council. And I think that the bill is new in this legislature, so we have time to get comments and work it out. Thank you.
So I completely agree with you, with you, Rep. Demapan. But Rep. Danita did in fact make a genuine good faith effort to engage all the stakeholders on Saipan and Tinian and Rhoda. And if there's anyone specific that you would recommend in addition to Mina, we would very much welcome you to list it so that we can address those parties' concerns. So if you can respectfully give us a list of who you might recommend the chair to issue the letters for comment, that way we can address those entities, and then at the next meeting, hopefully we can hear from them. But what I fear is if you don't give us any specifics, we're going to forget Mina and other people like Mina unintentionally.
Okay, Chair, may I respond? So thank you, Council, and I think what you said, there is a list, I guess. If the author has engaged all those stakeholders, at least let's get their input on record, because right now we don't know what the engagement was. We know that the author has done her due diligence, and that is commendable, but we need those stakeholders to submit something for the record so that there is a balance in information before we move on this bill. That's just my recommendation. Thank you, Chair. I yield.
Thank you, Rep. Angel. Thank you, Legal Counsel. The floor is open for discussion, members. Rep. Nicholas, you are recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This is House Bill, right? 117. The language says here that it applies to the third senatorial district. It doesn't say first and second. So if the author can, to have changes here and include those, so we can understand more, because it says House Bill and it applies cinema-wide, but it says in the language it's only for us third senatorial district. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Nicholas. As stated by legal counsel, the House bill, it does state that it's just for the third senatorial district, but it's addressing a CNMI-wide law, and that's the reason why it's not a local bill. Legal counsel, did you want to add anything else to Rep. Nicholas's comment?
Oh, Rep. Nicholas, just as I wanted to explain that the title is referencing third senatorial district only because on Rhoda and Tinian currently the practice is legal pursuant to Commonwealth law. So in order to legalize it pursuant to Commonwealth law, we would a simple House local bill would have been insufficient because it's already by Commonwealth law illegal. And only Rhoda and Tinian were permitted by Commonwealth law to have checking in their respective municipalities and jurisdictions. So the reason why the author made this a House bill rather than a local bill was to address the Commonwealth law that currently prohibits the practice. So we couldn't go the local House bill. We couldn't do the local bill route. So we went to Tinian, we went to Rhoda, and we asked them if they were in support of the legislation and why this is a good or a bad idea, and they shared their concerns. Definitely, everyone's looking out to conserve the environment, conserve our fish, but they believe that with the right protections in place, that DLNR would be capable on Saipan of making this a sustainable practice, provided the regulations were in place and they had proper enforcement. So Rep. Denita and I worked on the bill with DLNR, and we actually drafted regulations already to respectfully propose that they consider these regulations so that they don't have a legal counsel who doesn't know the issue well drafting those issues in a vacuum. So we didn't want to step on their toes, but we respectfully submitted something for their consideration. And that was part of the package we gave to DLNR. And if that addresses your concerns, I'll yield.
Thank you, Council. But
Thank you, sir.
if I may,
Yes.
Madam Chair, uh, if I may suggest to the author to just scratch out the third senatorial district and put it a Commonwealth wide, because if this one comes to the Senate, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be an issue of addressing this House bill, and it says third senatorial district only. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Nicholas. I hear your concerns around, the other representatives or senators voting who are not from the third senatorial district voting on legislation that impacts only the third senatorial district. And that's noted. We're going to leave this item on the agenda, and your committee will work with the author, reach out to other stakeholders, and if the author would like to invite any of the agencies or local fishermen or women to speak before the committee, we can organize that as well. So if there's no objection, we can move on to the next item on our agenda. Okay, great. Thank you, members. Moving on to the next item, we have Senate Bill 22-22 to amend the provisions pertaining to village and agricultural homesteads in Rhoda, Tinian, and Saipan, and to specifically prohibit the Department of Public Lands from revoking a village or agricultural homestead permit after it is approved and issued because the applicant met all the requirements, including that the applicant has no interest in land at the time the permit was approved, and for other purposes, authored by Senator Francisco Cruz. And the floor is open for members. Recognize Rep. Nicholas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the Senate Bill 22-22 uh, gives so much benefits to our new land owners. There's a lot of our new land owners who have been, their land has been revoked or taken back by DPL. And I think this bill it will prevent our new land owners to be, to have their land revoked because of uh, non-compliance or not doing anything because of financial crisis. So I think this bill is so much beneficial to our people across Commonwealth, Saipan, Tinan Road, and the Northern Islands. So if I may ask that we should push this out for action or next session, if if everybody's agree. I mean, majority rules, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Nicholas. The floor is still open, members, for discussion. Yes, recognize Rep. Lozama.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I understand, I'll call it, Rep. San Nicolas was saying about homesteads that was given out to an individuals, but in the homestead policies or rules, they have, a- they have their own procedures or regulations as to accept that homestead, to comply. And we have a lot of people that are waiting, and they're still on the list. We got people waiting from, I believe, 1996, and they still can get homesteads. And so, if I'm going to be in support of this bills, then we need comments from the public. We need people to come in and say how do they want the homesteads be issue out, because if we don't have a rules and regulation to just issue out homestead and let that homestead sit there, and if you go down to Cacman, I've seen a lot of unmanned property, which means those property are not maintained, but it is a property of someone else. And so, what what do we say about those homestead? We shall just let it go because we have coming up with this law, this bill that we are going to protect them, and no matter how long, and people still waiting on the list. So I'm not sure about this bills. I need to study more and see what all the peoples especially the public, have to say. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you, Rep. Lozama. The Homestead program is a very complex program. We all know that our land here, whether the permits are for residential or agricultural homestead, it's limited. And our generation, mine, and those after may not even have a chance at obtaining homestead. So those are my thoughts. But I wanted to read from the Department of Public Lands comments that were received by the Senate, where former Secretary of DPL Marianne Concepcion Terreguezo does share the original intent behind the establishment of the CNMI homesteading program, village and agricultural, was to issue conditional homestead permits to eligible landless Northern Marianas descents. The village homestead program would allow an eligible permittee to enter into an assigned village lot to build his or her dwelling structure and reside with his or her family. The village homestead program came with specific conditions. One of them is not having a title to a village type lot prior to applying and even throughout the 3-year period of the homestead permit. An agricultural homestead applicant and a village homestead applicant must not have title to an agricultural and or village homestead land in order to be eligible for an agricultural and or village homestead permit. Senate Bill 22-22 now proposes to do away with the landless requirement throughout the eligibility determination period and the 3-year permit time of the homestead permit. Therefore, it proposes that after an applicant's permit is approved, he or she can acquire permanent freehold title to other private village property and or agricultural property. It also proposes that after an applicant has received their deed, they can divest their interest via leasehold or court order and be deemed eligible for another homestead lot. This defeats the intent and purpose of the homestead program. Just those two paragraphs from the Department of Public Lands raised a lot of concerns for me. And I am aware that we now have a new Department of Public Land secretary, and we have not heard from their office in regards to this bill. And so I would like to hear from their bill as well, from the sitting secretary as well. There were many concerns also raised by the Office of the Attorney General. The Department of Public Lands also raised a concern to retroactive application language that has provisions to apply this bill retroactively to January 1st, 2017, and undo actions of the department for the past 5 years. So the bill basically states that once an applicant is approved for a permit, they can acquire any type of property afterwards. The current language for homestead is that you get approved for a permit and you wait 3 years. And in those 3 years, you may not acquire property or a title. And so the bill is looking to remove that 3-year period and go back to 2017. So, there's a lot of complexities, and the homestead program requires a comprehensive review, I think. And I know that the author has been issuing statements in the press regarding this bill and would like to see some type of action take place. And so the floor is still open for discussion, members. Rep. Angel?
Thank you, Chair, for covering the village homestead portion of this bill. I do want to point out on the agriculture homestead portion of the bill that the House had passed a agriculture homestead legislation recently, authored by the floor leader. And so I think some of those provisions passed by the House would be overlapping or in contradiction to these provisions here. So that's something this committee might want to look at if we're going to consider moving this bill forward, that those amendments are incorporated so that we don't undo things that we just did. Just wanted to make sure that we point that out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Angel, for that very valuable piece of information. The floor is still open for discussion. Ready? Okay, members. So I think with this piece of legislation, your committee does recommend having our legislative aid review the legislation that the House passed and compare it to this. Recommendations that came from Rep. Angel. We'll ask the legislative aid to have that review completed. And then I will also reach out to the Office of the Attorney General and the Department of Public Lands so that they can review and comment on the latest version of the bill. And we can keep it on the agenda. Okay, so no objections. We'll move on to the next item. All right, thank you, members. And for all of this, we'll set a deadline and call for our next meeting so that we can stay on top of the bills on the agenda. Okay, moving on to the next item on our agenda, we have Senate Bill 22-47 to amend 1 CMC subsection 2484B to authorize the Central Statistics Division to request vital statistics data and fish, game, wildlife, and endangered and threatened species data, authored by Senator Edith De Leon Guerrero. Members, we did receive, the committee in the Senate did receive 4 comments from the Office of the Attorney General. Department of Lands and Natural Resources, Division of Fish and Wildlife, Director Manny Pangilinan. Department of Lands and Natural Resources, Endangered Species Program Manager, Lisa Sukowski. And the Department of Commerce. The floor is open for comments and for discussion, members. Thank you, Mr. Nicholas and Legislative Council. For clarification, members, the Senate Bill 22-47, we are reviewing Senate Draft 1. And so just based on the findings of the bill, the legislature finds that the Central Statistics Division is already required to collect health, welfare, and morbidity data. The division is not required to collect data that includes fish, wildlife, endangered species, and the such. And so the intent of the bill is to require that this data be collected by the Statistics Division at the Department of Commerce. So if there's no further discussion and the committee is ready, I do recommend that that we adopt this committee report.
So moved.
So there's been a motion, it's been seconded. Any discussion? Ready? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. All right, the ayes have it. And so Senate Bill 22-47 SD1 has been adopted.
So the AG's office made us.
Short recess. Okay, we're back in session for our NR committee meeting, and we are still on Senate Bill 22-47, Senate Draft 1 to amend 1 CMC subsection 2484B. This committee adopted the current form, the current version of this Senate bill, and I would like to ask that the committee reconsider and we withdraw the committee's action if there's no objection.
No objection.
Okay, thank you, members. No objection. So we will withdraw that adoption. And now I would like a motion to offer an amendment to Senate Bill 22-47 SD1 so that we can take into consideration the comments that we received from the Office of the Attorney General. There's been a motion. It's been seconded. Any discussion?
Read it.
Thank you, members. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. And the amendment to Senate Bill 22-47 SD1 has been adopted. And so now, just to be clear, Senate Bill 22-47 SD1 will be offered as House Draft, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, to include the amendments from the Office of the Attorney General on page 2 and 3, lines 27 to 28 on page 2, and line 1 on page 3, where we will have consistent language in this section of the bill. Okay, thank you, members. Legal counsel, is there anything that I'm missing?
No, but Chair, if you would permit me, I would just read the amendment into the record just so there's no ambiguity.
Yes,
So
please.
thank you very much. It'll be quote 14, vital statistics data as defined in 1 CMC section 26005 M from the Health and Vital Statistics Office, semicolon, and 15, fish, game, wildlife, and endangered and threatened species data from the Department of Lands and Natural Resources, semicolon, quote, end quote. So that would be the language that we are inserting on lines basically 27 and 28 of page 2 of SD1. That'll make it the House Draft 1 if the House adopts it. Thank you.
Thank you, legal counsel. Members, any questions for clarification?
Yeah, that's the SD, CAM's SD1. Yours is just the 2247.
Members, the current version of the Senate Draft 1 is in the drive for our committee. Okay, thank you, legal counsel Joe Tyron. Thank you, legislative aide Cam Nicholas. Members, we will move on to the last Senate bill on our agenda for markup and discussion, Senate Bill 22-52, to provide for quarrying, controls, and reclamation plans in the Commonwealth and for other purposes, authored by Senator Edith De Leon Guerrero. The floor is open for questions or discussion, members.
Chair.
Recognize Rep. Angel.
Thank you, Chair. And I just for the sake of discussion on this bill about the reclamation plans and post depletion, I think I'm wondering if a quarry digs or quarries this piece of property, and as we've seen with other quarries, it ends up in a humongous hole, right? And so, in order to effectuate a reclamation plan, you have to create another hole somewhere to fill that hole. Like, what do you fill an existing hole with? So, I'm just wondering how this reclamation and post depletion plan um, can be complied with. Does it mean we're just going to keep moving the holes around the island? Or what happens if there's no alternative site to quarry to reclaim a previous quarry? So I think that's something that we need to look at. And then the other thing is, I noticed on some of the requirements that are included in this bill, that these requirements already exist in a major siting permit application. So maybe we also want to engage with the major siting permit agencies on whether, if we mandate these requirements, does it affect any future major siting permit applications, whereas these agencies have regulatory authority to adjust those requirements. And so making this law specifically for those requirements that are already in the major siting permit, um, just to make sure that it's not going to be an adverse action for any future major siting permit applications for quarries. So just that. And finally, on the quarry control section, having to include requirements with MSHA, which is the Mining and Safety Health Administration. MSHA just came into the Northern Marianas just a few years ago and decided that, oh, CNMI, I think you guys are not doing your mining right or your quarrying right. And that really is, at that time, I was in the 20th legislature, and we were wondering why the sudden interest in quarrying and mining here. It was around the same time that seabed mining became an active discussion regarding the CNMI seabed. And so this timing is a little bit suspect because we don't know truly what kind of value is in our seabed that they may know. And all of a sudden now there are MSHA requirements for mining and quarrying. And in this bill, it looks like it's just covering quarrying and surface mining or land mining. But truly, these requirements would ultimately lead us to seabed mining. And I think that the Commonwealth, and that's why I introduced the Bioprospecting Act, is the Commonwealth should be cautious and do its own diligence before we surrender these requirements to MSHA requirements. I think that's something that we should look into. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Demapan, for those excellent points. The floor is still open for discussion, members. And for the record, the Senate Standing Committee report did note that they reached out to multiple agencies and businesses in the CNMI. Not everyone provided comments. However, Department of Public Lands, JG Sablon Rock Quarry, Inc., Construction and Material Supply through SP Denko and Associates, Hawaiian Rock Products, Saipan, USA Fanter Corp., and the Bureau of Environmental and Coastal Quality, Division of Coastal Resources Management. Those agencies and businesses did submit comments. So members, if the committee would like more time to review this report and the Senate bill, we can keep this on the agenda as well. But discussion is still open.
Just want to address Rep. Demapon's point on page 7, line 15 and 16. I just took a look at this bill very briefly, and on line 15, it says quarry areas that are disturbed on the effective date of this article are exempt from further reclamation requirements. So to me, this may be a very big carve out for the areas that are in most need of help. So page 7, yeah, the bill. Looking at SD1, 22 SD1, section 106, line 15. Quarry areas that are disturbed on the effective date of this article are exempt from further reclamation requirements. So I think your concern is very valid that we need to understand really who this is going to be affecting, and if this is really going to be prospective for the few quarries that, well, I mean, I guess this is prospective. So, there aren't a lot of quarries going up, but if there is a new one, we should probably have a plan for reclamation. Let's not keep making the same mistakes. But I don't think any of the quarries that exist now will be governed by this legislation.
Thank you, Council, and that's why I bring it up, because I don't think we want big land holes or quarry holes left behind, and to have this exemption is also like, begs the question of what the intent here is, because then we leave all these ones and enforce new ones when we don't expect any more new ones, really, because the availability of land to quarry is not even there. Everybody has it already. Like the existing quarrying companies have it. So that's why I was bringing up that how do you, if you enforce the reclamation plan, how do you reclaim lands like that without the resources? So thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you, legal counsel. Thank you, Rep. Demapan. All valid points. Very good discussion on this Senate bill. So if there's no objection from the committee, let's go ahead and leave this on the agenda. We'll invite the author and other agencies around permitting to provide further clarification for the committee. No objection? Okay. Thank you, members. So we move on to section E of the agenda, department and agency communication, 22-63, from the Department of Public Lands to the contracting officer for the United States Postal Service, USPS, regarding the lease agreement number LA97-10S, dated July 19, 1997, lease, request for lease extension. And members, this agency communication was a part of our agenda at our last House session. I just wanted to ensure that we put this on our agenda and that it stays at the forefront of our minds, because this will have a date for us to respond and act on. I did give the Department of Public Lands a call this morning. There's no further update around the drafting of the lease or in communication with the contracting officer from USPS. But it has been communicated to DPL that we are aware, and this committee will be awaiting any form of updates around the drafting of the lease extension. Are there any comments? The floor is open for discussion around this. Ready? Okay, so moving on to miscellaneous. The floor is open for miscellaneous members. Okay, moving on to announcements. The committee will call for another meeting regarding the items left on our agenda. I do want to make an announcement that I will be leaving on November 10 and will be returning around November 25th. And so I would like for us to meet at least once before then to discuss the items that are left on the agenda. I will be heading to Egypt for the United Nations Climate Change Conference, and some preparation will need to happen before then. So please be on the lookout for communications regarding our next meeting. Okay, members? That is a good point under the announcement sections. We do need an update on our committee trip to the Northern Islands. Okay, any other announcements, members? There's also a premiere tonight at the American Memorial Park for Island Time 670. It's the first time a local TV puppet show for children was produced by the Humanities Council. Our office did support this. It supports decolonization through the revival of language and involving our youth. And so I would like to invite the members and our community to attend. It's going to be a lot of fun. Bring the kids. It's from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at American Memorial Park Theater. Okay, any other announcements, members? There are none. We'll move to the last item on our agenda, adjournment. Can I get a motion? There's been a motion for adjournment. It's been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you, members.